co-chair of the Ocean Decade program called SmartNet. You see the symbol there. So that stands for Sustainability of Marine Ecosystems through Global Knowledge Networks. So SmartNet is sponsored by ICES and Pisces, which are two leading intergovernmental marine science organizations. And our program goal is to leverage the infrastructure and partnerships and collaborations that we've had between ICES and Pisces to build a global network that can share knowledge and capacity around the themes of climate impacts on marine ecosystems and their resilience and sustainability. So I will hand over briefly to our other co-conveners. So I'll send it to you, Claire.
Great. Thanks all for joining. My name is Claire Interline. I am the program coordinator for FishScore, which stands for Fisheries Strategies for Changing Oceans and Resilient Ecosystems. And our UN Decade program is focused on three main things: to build an international network for information exchange about climate resilience, impacts of climates on fisheries, in order to build collaborations and a community around the topic. We also aim to support projects that are working on enhancing climate resilience, as well as using those experiences and the information that's exchanged as part of the network to develop a global understanding of how fisheries are impacted by climate change. And thanks very much for joining. I'll turn it over to Laura.
Thank you, Claire, and welcome everyone. My name is Laura Anderson. I'm an engagement project manager with the Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions, which is a research center based at Stanford University. And I help support the Blue Food Futures program, which is a Ocean Decade endorsed program that focuses on integrating blue foods into global policy discussions, as well as building a global network to further blue food research policy and sustainability solutions. And it's a program that's led by the Center for Ocean Solutions in partnership with the Environmental Defense Fund, the Government of Iceland, the Stockholm Resilience Center at Stockholm University, World Fish, NCs, the University of British Columbia, and Chapman University. And I'll pass it over to Grace.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Grace Roskar. I am the coordinator for the SUPREME program, which stands for Sustainability, Predictability, and Resilience of Marine Ecosystems. So within SUPREME, we are trying to build an international network to share information and support robust climate and ocean-related forecasts and predictions and projections to help guide effective marine ecosystem management and promote best practices in developing these modeling infrastructures. So thank you all for being here, and I think I'll turn it back to Stephen.
Hey, great. Thanks, everyone. So we're ready to get into our two invited presentations today. Each one will be about 20 minutes with a little bit of time for questions, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end for additional discussion or questions as well. So our first presentation is from Drs. Marivic, Pajaro, and Paul Watts from Daluhay. So do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Is that okay now?
No, you need to go to full screen and go to the first slide.
Oh, no. Is that working now?
Not yet, no.
We don't see it yet. Yeah, if you could share your screen again and then just put it in presenter mode and should be good.
Okay, we see the slides now.
Okay.
And you can get the presenter mode and then we're good to go.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marivic. Really pleased to be with you all today and to have a chance to talk about our decade action, bioregional resilience, professional coastal resource management planning. We're going to focus on 5 of the challenges that are outlined in the white papers, 2, 4, 5, 9, and 10. Next slide, please. So spatial action planning is the focus for our work, and a lot we build off of the Satoyama initiative and their approach to socio-ecological production systems, which is aimed at landscapes and seascapes, but most of the work has been done on landscapes. And in the white background, you can see the results that came out of the Satoyama 2030 plan and their desire to focus on the UN decade in terms of working on spatial aspects of seascapes and conservation. And we're looking at a combination of disciplines, as most of us are in our field. And we consider energetics to providing the physics and currency of sustainability, while ethnoecology for us provides the humanity of sustainability. And we're looking at society, culture, and nature, and how they come together and how we bring them together to make a more sustainable planet and more sustainable fisheries. And we'll leave the polar bears to the end, but they're part of it. Next slide, please. So when we look at our approaches to the ecosystems, we really are basing our work on strong databases, socio-ecological databases in the Philippines and in Canada. So in the Philippines, we have a bioregional fisherfolk culture of collaboration that we've been able to characterize through a large study. And in the Arctic, we have a bioregional approach to the harvest and use of the marine resources for the Inuit culture itself. And these projects together touch on all 10 of the challenges, but our basic approach is for community-based spatial pluriversal technology. And by pluriversal, we are talking about the indigenous worldview and applying skills to that can be shared locally at the community level and internationally. So harmonizing knowledge systems to professionalize CRM, bringing spatial planning into a content that includes area, volume, biomass, harvest, protection, restoration, and education, and supports climate biodiversity monitoring at the level of self-sustaining ecosystems. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Marivic.
And something is, sorry, why did it? Okay.
Great. So when we talk about climate, there's really a lot of things that we could include under that. But in our work, we're really looking at these large-scale bioregional studies and how climate fits into that. And because the bioregions are generally considered as representing living organisms, we really haven't considered bioregions as a scalar unit for climate, but they represent the potential of bridging the gap between local and global climate action. So being able to monitor and be able to adapt and mitigate climate through bioregions themselves. And in the Philippines, in the North Philippine Sea, we're working through 10 provinces and looking at the food security of over 10 million people on a very small shoreline. And where in Hudson Bay in the Canadian Arctic, we're talking about 3 provinces and 1 territory, but 1 million square kilometers of Hudson Bay compared to only 30,000 in the Philippines. The interesting thing for me has always been that in the Philippines and in the Canadian Arctic, we find the same kind of use of the marine systems for food. And in the Arctic, the challenge is there are very few alternatives. And really, an entire culture depends upon the marine system. So that's kind of how those things come together and why we're looking at the 2 bioregions at once, and in terms of challenge 5 and climate. Yeah, okay, thanks. Next slide. So we're really gone a long way in the Philippine program, and we've been able to work at this over the last couple of decades and get to the point where we can enter this ocean decade of change with a real plan. And we're looking at diploma skill area topics in our Philippine pilot program that focus primarily on spatial assessments of a variety of different resources, and socio-ecological approaches are added in after that. So community organization approach to inclusivity is a very big thing for us. We use social artistry called Sinigbayan here in the Philippines to do that, and harmonization of stakeholder goals towards restoration and then action research planning. So our goal is to have 100 professional planners by 2030 across the North Philippine Sea bioregion. And next slide, I'll turn that over to you, Marivic.
Thanks, Paul. So I'm now going to present to you what we are doing and what our plans are in the Philippines. And thank you all for this opportunity to present our programs and plans. So we are based in the North Philippine Sea, and we are primarily doing community-based approaches. And as Paul mentioned, it is always good to look at it from a bioregional perspective. So the Philippines has 6 marine bioregions: North Philippine Sea, Southern Philippine Sea, etc. But from the point of view of the Bureau of Fisheries, they are looking at fishing grounds. So somehow we have to harmonize the Department of Environment and Natural Resources perspective with key biodiversity areas with the thinking of the fisheries, which is more extraction, harvesting, etc., which they now have designated fisheries marine management areas for the Philippines. So in our area, the North Philippine Sea, we are focusing in a province called Aurora. And here we also are doing a reach-to-reef response. So we also work with indigenous peoples and fisher folk migrants, looking at coral reefs, seagrass, mangroves, to establish marine protected areas, and also look at those that have been established. There are also those that are proposed. At the same time, we are looking at the agricultural side of it and the forest side of it, because what is going on in the forest somehow will affect the seas as well. So we were working also, for example, with our mothers for a maternal health reserve establishment, because they're the ones who are problematic of what will be on the table. So they're usually at the intertidal zones, and there's a lot of competition there. So how can mothers also be able to make sure that they have food for the family, and therefore allocate a certain area as a reserve for them, particularly for the pregnant and the lactating mothers? So nationally, we were also engaged in the establishment of Alliance of Fisher Folks who are concerned with managing marine protected areas. Somehow this has been difficult for us to sustain because it's always difficult to bring together people from across different provinces throughout the country. But what we are seeing with them is they can be relied upon when they would want to make sure that their areas are also well protected. So they were given trainings, for example, on participatory coastal resource assessments. And their concern is also on livelihood and food security. So we worked with them previously on bay-wide areas, so more or less also a bioregion approach. In addressing challenge 4, developing a sustainable and equitable ocean economy, we worked with our national fisher folk organization to support some spatial and to reversal technology. Particularly, we build their capacities, and as I mentioned before, the participatory coastal resource assessments, which feed into making a management plan, is what they have been, and we have tried to facilitate for them to be engaged in, along with local governments, which means that I'm sure you're familiar with Stephen Covey's 7 habits that leads to success. And from dependence, we would like to have develop that independence, but if you cannot get that, then you also will not be able to be interdependent with each other. So building the networks would be somehow a way of also looking at how we can be successful in terms of building partnerships. So we would like to do this strategy, and what we have done is look into the human health and the marine ecosystem health, but at the same time consider that there are communities that need also to be sure that they're secure in terms of tenure. So the tenural rights of fishers, particularly on a shared resource, is important. And when we were working with our fisher folk organizations, this is somehow a big issue. And policy-wise, how can this be addressed, particularly since politicians continually change and sometimes they are engaged. So community-based is what the approach is, but if the politicians don't like to be identified with your group, then suddenly, because they're in control, then that particular marine protected area is not anymore going to be somehow recognized as some the governance will not be recognized as community-based for that particular group that did not support this current politician. But for village health workers, it's somehow different because there's institutionalization through a Republic Act where they get benefits and incentives. So we're hoping to be able to work together with these village health workers as well, and how that policy can be translated to these fish wardens or our members who are looking after our fisheries resources. What we would like to look into is, build a connection between the villagers and the national and the global community. Somehow, there is some network going on, and even in our government policies, there is the encouragement for communities to be engaged with the national governments. But there seems to be a gap, particularly at the global level. So what's being discussed at the global does not necessarily translate down to or filter down to the grassroots. So this gap needs to be addressed so that we can have more innovative approaches. And I'm happy that with this platform that we're having, we can somehow bridge this gap. And for our skills, knowledge, and technology for all, as we have continually mentioned, we are into community-based management, and therefore recognize that the local people have this capacity to understand and resolve many of their problems because of the experience and the knowledge they have, and they're close to their environment, and therefore can readily be the stewards of the resources. So with that, we would like to recognize that into a nationally certified program. So we have been working with the Technology, Education and Skills Development Authority in the Philippines, who gives out these national certificates. So hopefully we can be working with them more, and they're very interested also in community-based trainings, and have been open to our suggestion, and in fact have nationally prioritized the coastal resource data collection, communication development services, profiling and networking as among the focal programs for training in the community, which means fisher folk who have not been able to go to college are given that chance to get the certification. So since 2018, we have been working with the Technical Education Skills Development Authority for this national certification process, and we have been given the prioritization, but there's still a long process for it to really be nationalized. So there's this piloting and then monitoring still and refinements of the training regulations. But they're there. We're being recognized. And even the local governments seem to be keen on it because many of their staff also do not have that capacity to actually do resource assessments of their coastal areas and do the facilitation of the management planning as well. So that we really hope to forge partnerships with different stakeholders, and the coastal resource management Siningbayan approach or the social artistry approach is what we are promoting for this building the skills of our fisher folk. And therefore, what we would want to do is reconstitute that alliance of community-based marine protected area managers and have this healthier population, not only of our mothers, our children, the people in general, and be able to institutionalize our spatial CRM programs. And yes, certify our fishers and be able to be hired. Actually, we have the Green Jobs Act, and that is where the Skills Development Authority is wanting to anchor it as part of their program. So hopefully with this program, we can be reversing the decline in our fish catch, our poor nutrition, restoring marine ecosystem health. At the same time, we have to build that relationship with the village health workers, the fisher folks, and of course, the other stakeholders. So I turn you over to Paul again for the Hudson Bay program.
Thanks again, Marivic. The situation in Hudson Bay has been something that I followed for many decades. And back in the 70s, there was a lot of hydroelectric power development that resulted in a gradual decline in biodiversity in Western Hudson Bay and really degrading the bay's circular carbon sequestration system. So the polar bears are down 30%. The fish are gone in the traditional fishing areas for the indigenous people. The birds are down, the seals are down. And we've been looking at how to restore that as an approach to restorative justice and looking at indigenous food systems that used to be there and how we bring those back. We want to keep doing that. But we also want to establish a bay-wide cross-cultural marine watch so that we've got people all around the bay talking about the bay itself. And that is a large process because of the divisions that exist between the communities and very small communities with limited resources. So we started looking at how to do that. And we've got a proposal in for a small budget to initiate a GIS communication network, particularly in partnership with Saskatchewan Polytechnic and their GIS capabilities and building a platform that can be used bay-wide. Then we look to expanding that between 2025 and 2030, get into the restoration planning of those key estuaries on the western side of the bay, and look at bay-wide adaptation strategies to climate change as we monitor climate change through the GIS network we're going to create. Next slide, please. Back to the Philippines, we are quite advanced here, and we're moving forward in quite a strong way. We've got a budget now that's not entirely directed towards institutionalizing our program, but which we're building off of, and we're focusing on spatial capacity right from international to local, down to local levels and back. And that's what we're doing right now in 2024, and then looking ahead to 2025, and actually opening the training formally for our CRM Sinigbayan program, and by 2030 having our 100 graduates across the North Philippine Sea. The cost is about 70 million. That would be about 70 million pesos or 1.3 million US. In 2030, we have this objective, and it really fits into the development of a Republic Act that we've been working on with the government to bring in marine bioregional funding and management. And our idea is to jumpstart before that Republic Act comes into law, which will take several years. A lot of times Republic Acts here will be passed, and then be very slow to start up. So we're trying to set the platform so that we can jump ahead to the other bioregions in the country that Marivic mentioned, and always engaging our stakeholders across communities through spatial assessments. Next slide, please. Back to our friends, the polar bear. Now, when we're talking about bringing society and culture and nature together, society, of course, represents our education systems, very much our science system, but it also represents the passions and interests of others. And the decline in Hudson's Bay biodiversity is of interest to the people that are huge fans of the iconic polar bear. And so we've been reaching out to agencies such as the Polar Bears International and the tourism operators to get involved in the future of Hudson Bay, and by looking at restoring the biodiversity food chains that support the people and the bears. And really, it has the same, we're doing the same thing in the Philippines, but a vastly different situation. In Hudson Bay, it's about, if we look at where the rivers start at about 1,500 meters high, it takes 3,000 kilometers to get to Hudson Bay. And if we look at the same height of mountains in Aurora province, it takes 30 kilometers to get there. And so it's a very quick system in the Philippines, and the ridge to reef biodiversity is critical. So taking an iconic species such as the highly endangered Philippine eagle and looking at biodiversity restoration and conservation in the rainforests of Aurora also fit into the management of the offshore fisheries, which are very much dependent upon those flow of biodiversity coming into the ocean. So that's how we're approaching it. Now we've got a lot of different types of support for our work. The World Health Organization has showcased our maternal eco-health approach. The Philippine Association of Marine Scientists has published our approach to TESDA, and our Sinigbayan work has been published by the International Review of Education, put out by UNESCO. Next slide. In Canada, we have really based our work on an international law review we did about the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and how this needs to be considered in reopening the Nunavut Canada Agreement to provide funding for food security. And at the same time, of course, we've characterized the per capita Inuit marine dependence and publish that to form a basis for moving forward with our programs. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. There are some of our partners listed there, and I'll turn it back over to the moderators.
Thank you very much, Paul and Marivic. That's excellent presentation. So I think maybe we'll go on to the next presentation, and then I think we'll have a few minutes towards the end where folks can ask questions to any of the speakers. So yeah, our next presentation then is by Professor Dwikorita Karnawati, who will talk to us about the Fisherman Weather Field School from Indonesia. Okay, thank you. That looks great, thanks.
Well, thank you very much, dear colleagues, experts, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Dwikorita Karnawati, the head of Meteorological Climatology and Geophysics Agency of Indonesia, and the Executive Council of the World Meteorological Organization, as well as the chair of Intergovernment Coordination Group for Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System, IOC UNESCO. Thank you very much for the opportunity to learn and to share the experience in this very privileged session. And I would like to talk about the Weather Field School for fishermen and also the increasing ocean literacy. Next slide, please. Well, when we talk about Indonesia, this is the archipelagos with about more than 17,000 islands, and 60% of our region is the ocean. Our ocean is about 6.4 million kilometers square with 108,000 kilometer coastlines. Meanwhile, the area of our land is only about 1.9 million kilometer. So we can imagine actually we are living in ocean. So Indonesia situated in between two continents, that's Asia and Australia, as well as in between the large oceans, that Pacific Ocean at the east, and on the west we have there is an Indian Ocean. There are several climate controlling factors in Indonesia, which also related to the weather phenomena. We do have monsoon and cold surge, which also result in hydrometeorological disasters. We also affected by Indian Ocean dipole mode, Madden-Julian oscillation. We also have tropical cyclone. We struck by tropical cyclone several times. And our sea surface temperature is also sensitive to change, especially when climate anomaly occur. Just recently, we were suffered from El Nino. Meanwhile, several years earlier, about 3 years, we just been struck by La Nina. Apart from all of those, we also have local convections. So basically, our fishermen is quite vulnerable under those climate controlling factors, especially when there is an impact of climate change. So next slide, please. Please move back to the earlier slides. Please, earlier slides. Okay. When we talk about the disaster, normally in December, January, February, the most potential disaster related to the rough wave. And then from March to May, the most potential disaster related to the thunderstorm, tornado, and hail. And from June to August, that normally the dry season, we also have rough wave. Meanwhile, in September, October, November, we normally have a small tornado, thunderstorm, and hail. So we can see how vulnerable are the fishermen within these situations. Next slide, please. When we talk about the fishermen, our agency also provided mobile apps for them. We train this Climate Field School is a media to introduce information related to the climate, weather. All the information is provided in our mobile apps, which is so-called as the Inavis. And from that mobile apps, the fishermen can know before they go to the ocean. They can make a plan when they can go to the ocean or when they have to stay inland, because there is also early warning for the disasters. In these apps, they can also see where the pond of fish. So they do not need to search the fish anymore, but they have known the targeted fish pond within the ocean. So the philosophy has changed from catching the from searching the fish, becoming catching the fish. So that's actually the philosophy behind of the Climate Field School for the fishermen, is to train or to enhance the knowledge of the fishermen, how to adapt with the climate and weather, as well as how to improve their fish production. Next slide, please. So again, this is the potential sea and coastal disaster in Indonesia. We have tsunami, and then also we have sea level rise, due to the climate change, and we have flood in the coastal area. We have the rough wave, and also we have coastal erosion. Coastal erosion is really problems for the fishermen because their houses located in the coastal area, which is also vulnerable for the erosion, as well as for the rough wave, including tsunami. So next slide, please. This is several headlines in the media which reporting about various threats of the coastal weather and ocean weather, especially the rough wave, and then also the tsunami, the tropical cyclone, and several other disasters, which make the fishermen is in really vulnerable situations. Yeah, they really expose into vulnerable or into quite catastrophic disaster. Next slide, please. However, apart from our effort to literate our fishermen, actually in total in Indonesia, there are more than 3 million fishermen, and most of them illiterate about the weather and climate. So we have national programs for fishermen climate field school to literate them. And actually, the problem quite exists up to now. So we still need to move forward to help them, to literate them. The main problem again is the gap. Despite of high technology or advanced technology or digital technology that we provide from our observation, brings to the modeling, and then providing information related to the coastal and ocean disaster early warning, the gap axis is mainly about how they can understand all the technical informations, because the informations is the product of the advanced or higher technology, and it is presented with the figures, with the technical terms, with the numbers. So the gap is that information is too much complicated for them, as seen in the previous slides. Mbak Oka, please show the previous slides of Inavis. If we can see these figures, now, this is the figures in our mobile apps. It's for the fishermen, it is quite complicated, full of colors with numbers, and perhaps it's not quite easy for them to understand, even to click from one feature to the other features. So the gap is there, and this is our challenge. How to translate these all technical terms, figures, in order to be easily understood by the fishermen. Even about the colors, there is a green, yellow, orange. Some of them may not understand color. So it is really sad if they cannot understand color. So that's why we have the national program, how to train them, how to make them understand easily. So the training is prepared in a quite simple way, such as in the field. It's not in the room, but directly in the field next to their ship. So we work together in the coast area by introducing them several informations, and we try to make it in more simple way. So the next slide, please. That's it. So Weather Field School for Fishermen is actually the effort to improve understanding of weather information, even to provide easy access to our weather information, and to help them how not only to easy to access, but also to easily understood all those terminology, colors, and figures. And from these apps, because the apps is the presentation of the analytical product, also the product of modeling, product of forecasting, which is conducted by using AI, big data, and also using verified or validated by the radar data. So this information is quite highly accuracy, and it can help the fishermen to make a plan and to decide where and when they have to go to the ocean to catch the fish by understanding the information which is provided in the mobile apps. Later on, I would like to show the video how they develop their plan and how they decide to go to the ocean safely, targeted to the fishing port. Next slide, please. So again, the expected outcome of this program is to improve knowledge about weather climate literacy and climate change, and their use for fishermen and coastal communities, and then to reduce accidents and the risk of work accidents due to extreme weather. And finally, we do hope that can increase business certainty, and sustainability. Next slide, please. So again, the changes in fishermen's point of view from searching, transforming into catching the fish. It's not searching fish anymore. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is the data showing the participants and location of Fisherman Field School, Fisherman Field School activities that from 2016 to 2023, we can see in the graph, it is quite significant increase numbers of fishermen that can be trained from years to years. So we do expect more and more fishermen can successfully manage their plan for fishing and improve the fish production. So the total fishermen that can be trained during that year is about 15,038 participants. And starting in 2021, Fisherman Field School will bring the operational concept to the field, with the aim of expanding the reach of beneficiaries of weather field school for the fishermen activities. So next slide, please. Next slide. Finally, I would like to show or to share the success story of the Fisherman Field School. There is one champion. People call him as Mr. God, Dewa, Mr. God, because he successfully saved the community in one village, in the Fisherman Village. Last 2021 tropical cyclone hit his island, and more than hundreds people killed and another hundreds people missing due to that tropical cyclones which hit the small islands. Luckily, one alumni of the Climate Field School, which has been a champion, he got the early warning from our agency. Actually, there has been early warning about a week earlier. A week earlier, they have known that, so they can make some preparation. And finally, when the tropical cyclone hit, they have managed to evacuate one village community and to save their ship into the safe area, and none of them killed by the tropical cyclone. So this is the example of the success story. And to close my sharing, please allow me to show the short video. It's about 2 minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, please. Thank you very much. Please, Ms. Oka.
Sampai hari ini dan sejauh ini berkat bantuan dari BMKG, kami
That's the apps that we provide. It can be seen in the screen. It can be seen in the screen. Sorry, the voice is missing. So that's the community of the fishermen, and this is the way we train the fishermen before going to the field. We train them in the class, but then go to the field. And this is Mr. God, ya, Mr. Dewa.
Bantuan televisi ini, Ibu, dan informasi cuaca yang dikirimkan untuk kita ini, kita juga bentuk tim siaga. Karena belajar dari Seroja sebelumnya, akhirnya Kita sekarang membentuk tim siaga
They
juga
manage
untuk
to have the
untuk
team
mengungsikan
of
warga apabila
awareness
cuaca
team.
ini menjadi ekstrim.
Task force
Kalau untuk saat ini,
awareness.
kalau di sini saya suruh nelayan sudah tidak melaut lagi tanggal 2 ini. Dan sudah nelayan sudah kembali semuanya. Tanggal 3 ini itu sudah ya, dia sudah lebih dekat.
They can
Ya.
make
Ya,
a plan
lebih dekat.
decision.
1 sampai 1,25 ini. Ya. Jadi ini udah dekat ini kayak kita. Nanti ada
So
lagi
they
kalau
know
di tanggal 4 itu
on
ya,
the 4th,
ini itu sudah masuk ke kita. Itu kita sudah kena ya.
on
Ya,
the 4th
ya,
they
ya.
have known
Ya, ya.
the high wave will come. Yeah, they have known earlier that the high wave will hit
pengetahuannya ke minimal ke seluruh provinsi NTT. Jadi kita selenggarakan semacam sekolah lapang juga, tapi yang levelnya di tingkat provinsi, mengundang perwakilan dari ini. Beliau diminta mengajar.
Oke, siap.
Jadi Bapak mengajar ke nelayan-nelayan seluruh provinsi NTT.
Also as the teacher to teach, to train other communities, fishermen communities in other area. So he's one example of the champion of this program, which can share their experience to the other regions. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Karnawati. That was an excellent presentation. So we have a few minutes left here, and so I want to open it up to the audience to ask any questions to any of our speakers. Anyone has anything? I'll just see if there's any. You could just raise your hand. We can call on you. Claire.
Thanks. I have a question. Paul and Marivic, this question is for you. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about spatial pluriversal technologies that you talked about.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. Thank you, Claire. I think it's really an interesting time in that we're really realizing how limited planet Earth really is, and there really isn't another backyard we can go into and start producing food and creating atmosphere. And so the spatial concept, bringing spatial into play, is really critical, especially in the marine environment, because it hasn't been done really at all in terms of socio-ecological approaches. The idea of pluriversal is to indigenous worldview perspectives. So looking at things holistically and also engaging indigenous people to help with plans that are holistic and project the indigenous worldview through a spatial context.
Suaranya nggak keras.
Excellent. Yeah, Grace, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read your comment in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Either. I was just curious what were the biggest challenges or main challenge in starting up the Fisherman Weather Field School?
Okay. Thank you very much for the questions. Well, the biggest challenges is about our capacity compared to the number of fishermen. You know, the number of fishermen is about 3 million in our countries. And we know that up to now, since 2016, we achieved is about 15,000 participants. So that's why we are now developing a mechanism how to accelerate that by collaborating with other institutions. So it can be conducted by other agency. So we create also training of trainers. And during the pandemic, we also have quite serious challenge. It is not allowed to go, yeah, to stay. So we must stay. So in that time, we stopped the training. Yeah, we stopped the training, and while after the situation is getting better, we start again, but hybrid. So some in the field, but many more not in the field. So basically that. Well, and another challenge is about the communications network. When they use our apps, yeah, they use limited in the coastal area. Once they have been in the middle of the ocean, the internet, the communication network is not there. So that's why we provide the information is not only that for that day, not only the weather for the day or tomorrow, but for the next 6 days, for the next 6 days. So they can make a plan rather longer. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, a further question about the Fisherman Field School. I'm wondering, are you able to utilize cell phones? And what percentage of the fisher folk be able to access cell phones?
Yes, indeed. In the coastal area, they can access the cell phone. In our country, one fisherman may have 2 cell phones, so it's quite easy to, because we have cheap cell phone, yeah, very diverse, yeah, from the cheap up to the very expensive. In terms of the cell phone, they can manage to have that and to get the access from the cell phone. However, again, when they have been in the middle of the ocean, although they bring the cell phone, there will be no signals. So the problem is the signals in the middle of the ocean. So now we are in the process of investing a special budget for the satellite communications, but it is very expensive. And another and we also try to provide information. It's not only for 1 or 2 days, but directly the prediction for 6 days. So when they have been in the so they can make a plan how long or how far I can reach the middle of the ocean before going to the ocean. When they are still in the coastal area, they have a prediction the situation in the ocean. So when they decided to stop to go to the ocean, sometimes for 5 days totally not go to the ocean because of this limitation of the network communication. So that's the problem, frankly. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional information, particularly on the satellite objective that you've been talking about. Very interesting, and we look forward to learning more about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're